Good afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel Carter. Good afternoon, Captain Perez. Good afternoon, class. I'm Cadet McGinnis, and today I'm going to be briefing y'all over why the total force concept in the Air Force works. In my slides, I've included a tweet that the U.S. Air Force put out. It says, "Our total force makes us a hashtag #ReadyAF." So there you go. Twitter said it works, so it works. Overview, we're going to be talking about the background of the total force concept, how it started, where it is today. We're going to be talking about some advantages and disadvantages of the total force concept in the Air Force. I will give my +1 on why I believe the total force concept in the Air Force really is a success. Some background. Total force, first off, is a concept in the Air Force which refers to the use of Air Force Reserve and Air National Guard forces in addition to active duty forces to accomplish the Air Force mission. So basically bringing together the non-active and active duty sides of the Air Force to complete whatever mission is at hand. The total force was first conceptualized in 1953 when the Air Force used it to describe how it planned to bring in reserve units to work with the active duty units. A study was conducted that analyzed the possible future roles for reserve forces, and that study concluded that it would be in the national interest to increase Air Reserve participation in almost every major mission area. So before total force was even put into practice, it was believed that it would be a great success for the Air Force. A few years later, the total force concept was declared in 1970 by the Secretary of Defense with two major points that he wanted to see carried out. He established a total force concept with the emphasis to be put on finding the right mix of active and reserve units that would best support the mission, and that the reserves and guard would be the first source of extra manpower to be pulled from by the Air Force in case of an emergency. So they wouldn't go anywhere else, they would go to their non-active units in case of emergency first off. And today, the working relationship between the active and non-active Air Force continues to develop and improve. The Air Force is still working towards a goal of the complete meshing of forces through a concept that has been called future total force. It has the goal of maximizing the capability and equipment and balancing the experience levels of Air Force members. So bringing in older, younger airmen, those with 25 years, those with 2 years, to all work together and provide the best future for the Air Force that we can. Some advantages of the total force concept. Reservists bring outside experience from their civilian jobs. So whether that job parallels their career in the Air Force or not, through the people that they work with, the situations that they're put in the civilian world, they bring unique experience and approaches to problem solving that some members may not have from not working in the civilian world. Likewise, reservists bring experience from their prior service. Reservists who were previously active duty bring in vital experience, wisdom, and expertise when dealing with their active duty comrades who may often be younger than them. And last, utilizing non-active units reduces the cost for the Air Force. Assigning missions to part-time units as opposed to active units, where they would be considered full-time capability, saves time and money while allowing previously dormant reserve units to mobilize and aid in completing Air Force objectives. Next, we'll talk about some disadvantages of the total force concept, because every idea, every concept, no matter how positive or strong, will have some downfalls to it as well. So the first one is total force needs may exceed the original commitments made by non-active duty members, and the continuous use of non-active duty side may result in the Air Force becoming too dependent on their non-active units and members. Next, the airmen in high demand specialties risk overuse. Some of the main ones are intelligence, combat search and rescue, and pararescue that are in great need but don't have as many airmen filling those roles. And so those non-active duty members in those jobs being called upon more often than not may lead them to feeling overused, may lead to them burning out and leaving the Air Force altogether. And finally, up-to-date training and equipment for non-active duty units does require some extra funding. So while using non-active duty units does save the Air Force money compared to sending missions to active duty, it will cost them to make sure that those units are up to date on the information, the training, and the equipment needed to complete those missions. My +1 for why the total force concept does work and is the best solution for the Air Force is the fact that non-active duty forces supplement active forces in vital operations and have for many, many years. For example, during Operation Iraqi Freedom, reserve forces flew at least 45 and as many as 90% of the missions of various aircraft, including air refueling sorties and aeromedical evacuations that were carried out. So that is an overwhelming, sometimes an overwhelming majority of missions were flown by non-active duty units and personnel. I have a graph in my slides that also outlines the amount of mission days served by non-active duty units, and those spiked dramatically during Desert Storm and Desert Shield. So just another example of how non-active duty units came in and were vital to the success of the United States in very important missions. Today I talked to you about the background of the total force, where it came from when it started, and how it continues to grow and develop today. We talked about some advantages of the total force concept, the outside experience brought in by reservists, the disadvantages of the total force concept, funding, and the risk of those non-active duty members feeling maybe burned out. And we talked about the +1, the amazing aid that non-active duty members bring in to very important missions and operations for the United States. That concludes my briefings. If you have any questions, leave them as a reply to the thread, and I hope everyone is doing well.